Hey guys, in this video we're going to be starting Target C. Our mastery learning objective for this first video is I can solve proportions by cross-multiplying and using the rules of linear equations. So the first thing is kind of filling in some missing components here. Proportions is a proportion, well, what is a proportion? A proportion is an equation that states that two ratios are equal. And basically, we've kind of been setting up our proportions when we were dealing with our side theorems and our side angle sides. So the general form of a proportion is A over B is equal to C over D, where A and D are called extremes and B and C are called means. So cross product property says the product of the extremes is equal to the product of the means. So basically what that is saying is extremes, A and D are extremes. So that means A and D, if we were to multiply these together, right, these are my extremes, that's going to equal B and C, which are my means. So if I were to multiply B and C, those are also equal. All right, so that's what I mean by cross multiplying. You're multiplying the numerator and the denominator of opposite fractions times the numerator and denominator of those opposite fractions. So when I'm looking at some of these examples, like example number 1, you're going to do just that and you're going to cross multiply. So when you cross multiply, I'm going to go ahead and do my extremes. It does not matter the order in which you multiply them either. So I'm going to say 2 times 9. So 2 times 9. That's going to equal my means there, which would be 3 times x. So now when I simplify this, 2 times 9 is 18. This is going to equal 3 times x, which is 3x. Now I want to solve for x. So this should be familiar, right? Solving linear equations here, which means this is getting multiplied. The opposite of multiplication is to divide on both sides. And that's going to divide out to give me 1x. And 18 divided by 3 is 6. So x is going to equal 6. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on to example number 2. So now I'm going to multiply 6 times 5. That's going to equal 2x times 7. And then I'm going to go ahead and simplify. So 6 times 5 is 30. 2x times 7, so 2 times 7 is 14. Don't forget about my x. And then to solve for x, we have to do the opposite, right? This is getting multiplied, so the opposite would be to divide by 14 because the goal, obviously, is to get that x by itself. So x is going to equal 30 divided by 14, which does simplify to 15 over 7. So if you don't know how to divide some of these or simplify, please use your calculator. All right, looking at example number 3. So we still have a proportion, right? We still have two sides that are set equal. The only difference is that we have now a little binomial. So when we are multiplying here, I'm going to go ahead and multiply my sides together. So looking at this side, so 12 times 2 is going to equal 3 times, now this is where I would use parentheses, x plus 4. Since this is more than one term, please put it in parentheses because that means you have to distribute. So now if we simplify, 12 times 2 is 24. 3 times x plus 4. Well, 3 times x is 3x. 3 times a positive 4 is a positive 12. Now I want to get x by itself, so I have to do my adding and subtracting first. So I'm going to subtract 12 over. That's going to give me 12 equaling 3x. And then I'm going to do the opposite operation. So that's multiplying. So the opposite is to divide by 3 on both sides. and x is going to equal 4. All right, so when you have more than one term, please put it in parentheses, exactly like in number 4, right? I see that 2x plus 6 is more than just one term, so I'm going to put it in my parentheses so that when I cross multiply these, I know that I have to distribute that 5 to 2x plus 6. And it doesn't matter to which order that you write, if you want to multiply, the extremes on one side and then the means on the other side, as long as you are multiplying the correct numbers with each other, it does not matter the order or what's on the left or what's on the right. All right, so now when I distribute, 5 times 2x is 10x. 5 times a positive 30, or positive 6 is a positive 30. Kind of gave that one away. 8 times x is 8x. All right, I want to isolate my x's. So this time, I see that I have an x on both sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my x's are only on one side. So I'm going to subtract 8x over here. So 10x minus 8x is going to be 2x plus 30 still, but now it's equal to 0, right? Because 8x minus 8x is 0. I want to get my x by itself, so I'm going to move that 30 now over to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 30. So 2x is going to equal negative 30. I see that 2 times x. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide by 2 on both sides, and that's going to give me x equals negative 30 divided by 2 is negative 15. All right, last 2 examples here. Or actually, it's only one example. I see that I have 4 over x minus 1 times x over 5. So cross multiply here. I have x. There is more than one term here, so I'm going to put that in parentheses so I know to distribute. And that's going to equal 4 times 5. So when I distribute here, x times x is x squared. X times a negative 1 is negative x. Bring down my equal sign. 4 times 5 is 20. So now here, the way that I'm going to get my x's, when I have an x squared, is we have to factor. Remember going back to finding our x-intercepts? That means I'm going to have to bring my 20 over to the left. And this is going to equal now x squared minus x minus 20 equals 0. So what I'm going to do is some Punnett square work. And I wonder if I have more room on my notebook. But I do not. Okay, so, oops. So, my Punnett square, right? My x squared goes in the top left. My negative 20 goes in that bottom right. So what I'm looking for are 2 numbers that multiply to negative 20, but add up to a negative 1x. So the way that I'm going to see that, so remember, negative 20 here. So this is my negative 20. I need 2 numbers that when I multiply, I get a negative 20, and then this should be a review. And then when I add those same 2 numbers, I get a negative 1. All right, so the only numbers that actually is going to work there would be a negative 5 and a positive 4, right? Negative 5 and a positive 4. Those are the only 2 numbers that would work in both scenarios. So this is going to be negative 5x. This is going to be a positive 4x. Figuring out what the outsides are, well, x times x is going to give me x squared. X times a negative 5 is going to give me a negative 5x. And x times a positive 4 is going to give me a positive 4x. Triple check that last box, right? Positive 4 times negative 5 does, in fact, give me a negative 20. So my 2 sides of my Punnett square are going to be exactly what I have right here. So this is going to be x minus 5 and x plus 4. Don't forget that this is still equal to 0. And now I want to set each of them equal to 0 and solve for x. So x minus 5 equals 0 would mean I add 5 over to the other side, and that's going to be x equaling a positive 5. If I have x plus 4 equals to 0, I'm going to subtract 4 over to the other side, right? You always do the opposite. And that's going to give me x equals a negative 4. So these would be my two solutions for x. Okay, that brings us to the end of this video. Go ahead and practice 6C.1. Good luck.